This is the adidas Copa Pure, which has decided to more or less ditch everything adidas did with the Copa Sense and instead go back and build on that brilliant 19 and 20 plus. But is that a good idea? And is the Copa Pure any good? Well, today I'll tell you what works and also what doesn't really work as much to hopefully help you decide if you should buy a pair of the pluses or the 0.1s. Because as always, I'm JayMike and this is my review of the Copa Pure. So the Pure goes back to what the 20 Plus did really well, giving you a nice leather experience with a modern twist. And there is more leather on the Pure, 52% more than in the Sense, to be exact. However, it's not K-leather anymore. Because the Copa Pure is made with a forefoot out of calf leather instead. And before you go and rage quit the video because what on earth is this on a Copa, let me just show you this. Because I kind of felt the same way. I was like, what are you doing, guys? And almost wrote the boot off before I even tried it. But it's soft. It's really, really soft. And sure, it might have a different feel of tightness to it compared to K-leather, but it still just molds amazingly well around the foot in that way that only a high quality, really premium piece of leather will. And also you get this relatively tight and close feel around your foot because of this low, snug fitting toe box. But it still has that ability to stretch a bit and also almost the willingness to mold around the shape of your foot that a leather upper will give you. So yes, it's calf leather, but it's also just pure love. But just like on the previous generations of the Copa, there's only leather on the forefoot. And for the rest of the fusion skin material, adidas have used a so-called flexing mesh, which sounds fancy, but in reality it's just a mesh that stretches a little bit to give it a slightly leathery-ish sort of feeling. It's also got a little bit of structure to it though, and it's actually a nice enough material. But the best bit about the Copa 0.1, which is now also the main boot out of the two, is that it has laces, but also adidas have ditched this god-awful burrito-style tongue from the 19 and 20.1s, meaning that now you just have a traditional U-throat, offering this very nice, pleasant, distractionless fit, but also a good amount of room for adjustment. I like my burritos, just not in my football boots. Now, the fit in the heel is tight to give you that secure locked-in feel, and you can definitely feel how it wraps your heel relatively closely and securely. Perhaps even a bit too much for those most hardcore OG comfort traditionalists out there. And it definitely follows that trend of having a more modern and sleek and streamlined interpretation of a leather boot. But I actually like how this more sculpted and tight feel offers a solid amount of lockdown, and more so than in the last generations of the Copa, but still in a pleasant, comfortable way. Now, size-wise on the Copa Pure, these are a UK 6, which is half a size down from what I would normally wear in adidas boots. And while you can definitely do it if you really appreciate this super skin-tight, almost painted-on-like feel, I would definitely recommend going to the size in the Copa Pure. Especially also because they're not the widest boots in the world, so while you can definitely wear them with a wider foot, you'll have to be prepared for having a really intimate relationship with the upper, because they are on the tighter fitting side in the midfoot and here. Oh, and just a word on the Laceless model, the Pure Plus, which makes me think of what I think we'd get if the Copa 20 Plus and the X Speedflow Plus had a child. Because you have this really sculpted, very skin-tight feel, but with a super comfortable forefoot that feels both a bit like a Copa and this sleekness, this tiptoeiness of a speed boot. And I mean, the idea of an X Speedflow with a leather forefoot is something I can definitely get behind. But word of advice, it is a little tough to get on at first, so have patience. Toe in first, pull the heel as open as you can, and squeeze. Good luck. Okay, so the fit doesn't really suffer under adidas swapping K-leather for calf leather, but what about the touch? Honestly, I don't think too many people are gonna miss the K-leather here either, because it is a nice upper on the ball as well. What we got here is a super thin upper package, meaning that you definitely feel more close on the ball. It's a sharper sensation, but of course you still have that hint of the trademark leather softness in there. What you also have is this haptic grip print, as it's called, on the inside of the boot. And you do feel a little bit more friction on the ball in places, but I mean, it could be more evident to really make a difference. And I understand that Adidas don't want to taint the purity of the leather, but if grip print is a road you want to go down, just make it a bit more noticeable. Otherwise, why is it there? Anyways, shooting and passing also feels pretty good, and again trends a bit more towards that closer, sharper feel rather than the softer, pillow-like slipper sensation you would get in the 19 and 20 Copas. The outsole is a bit of an old friend, because actually Adidas have taken the torsion frame tooling straight off the Nemesis, and while that might seem a bit lazy, well, it's still a great tooling. It has nice flex in the forefoot, a rock solid and stable midfoot, and a relatively versatile and comfortable stud pattern. But it was also kinda the easy way out. Which leads me to 4 annoying things that you also need to know about. The first thing is the heel on the 0.1, which just feels a bit unfinished and not super premium. And I mean, just going for a classic stitch and turn, like on the leather battle packs, would just have been nicer. Oh, and just like on the Nemesis, the tooling gave me a bit of stud pressure right here, which thankfully has gone away now that I've broken the boots in. So don't panic if it happens to you too, just be a bit patient. Also, the look and feel of the materials on the heel in the 0.1, to me just look a little bit cheap and plasticky. And I mean, it looks nice on the Laceless version with that leather grain, so just, And finally, there is the thickness of the upper. Now don't get me wrong, I think it's a very solid feel, but I would have preferred just a bit more foam in there to give that slightly more soft and elegant and, wizard on the ball-like sensation that you got in the older Copas. So it's a personal preference thing, maybe you'll like it, but a little bit more, it would have been perfect. So to sum it up, the Copa Pure is a pretty uncontroversial boot that's easy to like. And that is the Copa Pure's biggest strength, but might actually also be its biggest weakness, because I think a lot of people will really like them when they get them on their feet. But maybe they're too uncontroversial and too nice, if you get me, to really stand out, so people get them on their feet. And that's maybe a shame. I think these are really good, to be honest. I like them a lot, and I think they're way, 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 way better than the Copa Senses, and actually boots I would consider putting in my matchday bag again. But guys, what do you think about the Copa Pures? Let me know in the comment section right down below. Make sure to cop the Copas over there in the link to Unisport. Of course, make sure to subscribe to the channel with the notifications on if you haven't done so already. And if you want to learn some crazy new techers, hit the playlist up right down there with those words. I'll be signing off. Cheerio.